Everyone, welcome back to another session here at Summer School. We are really cruising through day three, and we are having so much fun learning, growing together, having a chance to connect with each other, and getting inspired about what's next for us. And so today, Sarah Reynolds and I, Sarah's a longtime friend, we're going to be talking about some of the key things we can be doing around hiring, growing our teams, bringing in the best people, all of that good stuff. Sarah, so excited to have you here with us and excited for the HiBob team for coming alongside Summer School again and being a great partner. Welcome.
Really excited to be at Summer School today. Thank you so much for having us having us back. Really, really glad to see all the great engagement today in the chat and with the audience. So keep it coming, folks.
Absolutely. Well, hey, most people don't say that, have never said that in their life. Hey, I'm excited to be at summer school. And yet that's a common thing we hear here for HR summer school. So it's a little bit different than what others might be expecting. So many of the audience members already know Sarah, already love Sarah, but if they're new, tell us more about who you are and what you do, please.
Sure. My name is Sarah Reynolds. My pronouns are they and them, and I'm Chief Marketing Officer at the HR technology company HiBob. HiBob is the type of HCM platform that is built for really everyone in your organization. We firmly believe that HCM shouldn't just be a back office function. We want to make technology that employees really love to use as opposed to resent having to use. So if you're a member of what we call the 3M Club, your company's really modern, you are really people first, right? You are maybe mid-size and you're oftentimes like multinational or multi-site, then HiBob's a great option for all of your HCM needs.
Wonderful. So, as I mentioned for the audience there a minute ago, we're going to talk through hiring, really dig into this. We haven't had a session at summer school so far that's really tucked into this. So I'm excited to explore it, to share some stats with the audience, but also to give them some good practical takeaways as well. So, just to start off, let's take a step back from our audience of HR leaders and talent leaders here and talk about the candidates they're serving. One of the things that we saw in our new research that HiBob, again, partnered with us on. It was a tremendous amount of data out of that. One of the big stats that stuck with me is that about 3 out of 4 candidates told us they pretty regularly experience frustration during the hiring process. And I'd love to hear from you. Why do you think that is?
I think you can attribute it maybe to two different avenues. One is candidate expectations of how fast the process is going to move, how efficient it's going to be, and how transparent it's going to be are like fundamentally different oftentimes than what we as HR teams or TA teams are prepared to deliver or what our hiring managers are prepared to deliver, right? Oftentimes we go into it with the best of intentions. We're going to have 5 interviews total and they're all going to happen in a 3-week period and everything's going to be like hunky-dory and everyone's going to have a perfect, beautiful candidate experience, right? And the reality is, though, that we're working with parts of the organization. Take hiring managers, for example. Not only are they doing their regular job, but they're also oftentimes, if you're hiring for a backfill, the backfill person's job. And now you're giving them a third day job, which is helping you recruit, hire, interview everybody, right, that is coming through the process, right? And they want to deliver, I'm a hiring manager, we want to deliver a best-in-class candidate experience. But oftentimes that's between a rock and a hard place for us in being able to really effectively participate in the process that you have designed. The other thing I just think is that organizations, big or small, we move slowly, and the market out there is really moving a lot more quickly for candidates, right? They want to see progression. They don't want to wait a couple of weeks to get on somebody's schedule between interview sessions. They want a finite number of sessions with your organization. They want you to be really confident that they're the right choice and they don't want to have to jump through hoops to get there. So I think that those things really kind of stack up to make a less than ideal candidate or a maybe not expectation setting or expectation meeting candidate experience. The other thing I might say is that a lot of us, again, we want to deliver a best-in-class candidate experience, and we're really good at selling our organization. But the thing I ask people all the time is, are you catfishing your candidates? Are you selling them on the idea of an organization that is maybe different than what's the reality of your organization? And the reason I ask is not because we don't want to push our organizations forward or we don't want to put our best foot forward when we're talking to candidates and representing our organization. But when you're talking to them about values and culture and the openness or the transparency they're going to feel, or the management relationship, or the relationship in general that they're going to have with work, you want to make sure that putting your best foot forward doesn't mean saying that you're a guy who loves the outdoors and you have a fish in your dating profile when really you're more of an indoor cat. You want to make sure that it's the best version of the real culture that you represent, which is why it's so important to make sure that candidate experience and the expectation that you're setting with them really matches up with the reality of what you're going to deliver after they join the company.
That reminds me, I was speaking with our TA advisory board at one point a year or two ago, and one of them was a leader for a company, 70,000 employees across the US. And he said, we have this job. And just to be very clear with on the application, we are on the job posting, we put surface of the sun as the actual location of it because they were out in New Mexico. You're doing concrete testing work out under the sun. There's no shade, there's no relief. And he said, we were having, like once we did that, we actually got more applications of people than we were doing this other thing. And we started being very clear about here's how hard it is. This is a difficult job. This is not going to be easy. And it reminds me, if you ever read the book Endurance by Ernest Shackleton, he puts this ad out there for everybody to come on this adventure. Listen, terrible pay, terrible conditions, everything else. But if we succeed, like glory is there. And so they had all these people apply for it because they're like, I can see the end result, but in the middle of it, maybe not. So being clear, setting those expectations, I think is so important in there. You mentioned transparency as part of that. I think that's a really key part. Talk more about transparency as part of this, because I know it's a topic that you care deeply about on the pay side specifically. And we saw some things around candidates on pay and other things they really want to know about as they're going through the hiring process.
Yeah, listen, here in the US and in many places around the globe, right? Pay transparency is coming to the fore. It's no longer like oh, that's happening in a couple of states. And if I operate there, if I have employees there, I need to worry about it. It's really becoming the norm, right? And things like opportunity transparency, which are laws that require you to actually post like all of the job and promotion opportunities that are available in your organization internally and potentially externally as well, are coming behind pay transparency. So I think that the trend of transparency, regardless of how you look at it, is here to stay. But I think the beautiful thing about transparency is, again, it's an opportunity for you to set the record straight and for you to really tell your story and represent your culture and your values to candidates and to your existing employees in the same way, right? Don't think about transparency just as, oh gosh, now I got to put a range on a job posting, right? That's where a lot of people start and end the transparency conversation. Think about, well, I'm going to do that, and that's going to be visible to candidates, and that's going to have one effect. It's also going to have an effect on how my internal employees perceive their pay, right? They're going to want to know, what does that range represent? Why, if it's different than what I'm paid, is it different than what I'm paid? How is that fair, equitable, right? You want to be able to have those conversations, and you as HR professionals want to lead those conversations rather than waiting to be reactive with your internal employees. Because the reality is, I saw a stat from, I believe it was Willis Towers Watson, that 68% of employees at your current company would change jobs. They would leave your company, they would go and take their exact same job at another company just for increased transparency. Not for increased pay, not a change in job title, not more responsibility or a better career path, just for more transparency. 68. So lead that conversation with them. Proactively talk to them about what you're doing and how you're embracing pay transparency, how you're embracing pay equity. It's so important in the organization.
The biggest takeaway for that for me was that you positioned it, this is either a requirement or it's an opportunity. We can, anything in our life, we can say, well, I have to, or I get to. And say, I get to tell people about how well we're paying our employees and how many opportunities they'll have here, or, well, someone's going to make me do it, so I guess I have to. So I think even that little bit of a mindset shift of think about it that way. You get to tell them about how great your company is. And if it's not great, then make it great and then tell them. Let's get those things in the right order there. That's an encouragement for everyone out there listening, especially if they're like feeling this is put on top of you. Let's change the language a little bit and say, as Sarah said, you have an opportunity to do this and to really connect with candidates on a deeper level. It's not just a job posting with a bunch of must-haves in it. It's here's how we treat people and what we care about, and we would love to treat you that same way as a candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've seen data too that like the perception of pay equity and fairness is more important to candidates and to employees both than actually higher salaries or better benefits packages. So think about the opportunity that you have, again, to tie that into what you believe are your values and how transparency is a part of your culture and why it's so important to you to be talking and answering questions openly about things like pay or promotion, right? It's a tremendous opportunity for you to really change the narrative
Well, you talked earlier about, hey, there are 5 steps in the hiring process, and here's what you can expect. That's one of the other things we saw about transparency that candidates care about is I just want to know what's next around the corner when it comes to the hiring process too. There was some data we gathered last year on this because I know that you love stats. I can't remember the actual stat itself, so I'm going to fail myself here. But we gathered some data last year on candidate preferences and screening, and we found that the majority of candidates said, listen, 3 touches is enough. I don't need 4, 5, 6, 7 interviews. Like 3 is enough for me. And if they made less than $50,000 a year, it was more like 2 touches is enough. Don't put them through this giant screening process. Now that changes for things like executive hiring, things like that, or very specialized types of roles potentially. But the highest quality candidates you have in your pipeline are the ones who are going to have the lowest tolerance for that extra 4th, 5th, 6th step. So keeping it short, keeping it down. And as you're tying in there, Sarah, on the transparency side, being clear with them about what to expect there. They may be willing to put it with 4 steps, but not if they expect 2 and you surprise them with now it's twice as long. Well, here's what you have to expect. That's not going to end well overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great point. You want to make sure that you're communicating upfront what to expect. They want to know, right? Why would you want to participate in a process that's completely murky and gray? Does that leave me with a really good taste in my mouth? Not necessarily. I don't want the surprise. I want to know what I'm expecting. I want to know what I need to do to be successful at your company, right? It's a reflection of your culture. Are you the type of company who sets expectations clearly in the candidate process and therefore sets expectations clearly in the, I don't know, performance management process? Or are you just, I don't know, everything changes all the time and it's a mess? I want to join an organization that I feel confident knows what it's doing as the candidate, right? Never mind all the other things that the organization wants to assess for.
I don't want to work for a company where the norms change as often as the phone list does. So as someone who used to have to update the phone list as the low person on the HR food chain, I understand that thoroughly. You mentioned culture a couple of times. I want to come back to that one because I know that's the big focus for HighBob, a big focus for the companies you serve. You see their stories come out and are very clear about how they prioritize culture and supporting their people. When it comes to the hiring side, though, we call that employer branding, right? How do we tell the world about what our culture looks like, but outside the company? And we see in the research that a considerable number of companies are saying, I don't have the budget of a major enterprise. I can't spend like a Coca-Cola or someone else like a Home Depot. I can't buy all the ads and everything else for that, but I need to stand out. Talk about how a company can put their culture out there on display to stand out and show the candidates that this is a place that may fit their values and the things they care about.
There's really simple sort of like marketing techniques where you can take advantage of free channels, right? Make sure that your LinkedIn page is up to date, that you're showcasing things like your culture on your LinkedIn page. Make sure that your corporate website and your careers page represents the face of the company that you want to put forth, right? That's where candidates are going very basically to do their research. And if you want to get in front of really specialized candidates, think about sometimes the broadest reach in marketing of any kind isn't necessarily getting you to the exact target audience that you want. So think about maybe there's an opportunity for you to partner with some sort of professional organization and go to one of their events, right? Or there's an opportunity for you to partner with some sort of community organization if you're recruiting from a very specific place, right? Or you want folks who are within a certain distance of an office that they come to 2 times a week. But I would say more than thinking about tactics and channels and budgets and all the things that as a marketer, like I could talk your ear off about, I would say that your biggest opportunity is actually in what you say and how you say it. Because if you've been to the corporate website or the values page on a big Fortune 500 company, or maybe a couple of them in a row, you start to see that maybe those values were set through a really great, robust internal process that gathered data from employees and really a deep thought process about what that organization stood for. Or maybe they were set by a big 4 consulting firm and that's why they're all the same. Maybe
for the other half of that to come. I knew it was coming.
Yeah, you were like, I'm waiting. Maybe as a mid-size organization, you don't have the budget for a big 4 consulting firm, but that's a joy, not a challenge. You have the opportunity to sit with your employees, to create a culture committee, to work with your executives and your leaders to say, what are the values? What is our culture? What do we live and breathe? And then you have the opportunity for those to be like really well articulated and really well communicated, not just inside your company, right? You want to make it part of employee recognition. You want to make it part of the performance process. You want to make it part of the language you use in the all hands, everything internally. But it's also part of your employer brand because now you can go out and say, you know what? Values are not just words on a poster in our break room. They're not just consulting language on a website or a pretty slide from HR that we get an update to once a year. These are the things that we really live and breathe. And we think that we can offer you, the candidate, a differentiated experience than the folks for whom maybe the opposite is true, or maybe they don't necessarily see that same sort of rigor in how they think about culture development and culture manifestation in their organization.
I love that. I'm thinking as in my head, I'm trying to take us through an arc here for the storyline for this session. We had a lot of input on the candidate side, how to create that. We've talked about how to start positioning our culture and making it visible and tangible and relatable to candidates out there. And I want to ask one last sort of question before we wrap this one up. I want to talk about how our friends out there think about their hiring needs for the coming year. So many times it's, oh, this rec landed on my desk. Let's fill this position and move from there. This is much planning as goes into it sometimes. And it would be much more helpful for us if we knew ahead of time and could help our teams plan ahead of time a little bit. So before you answer this question sort of around how we can think through that, I want to ask the audience really quickly, take a second, post in the chat, the hardest job that you have to fill, the job that you're like, oh gosh, I've got to post this job. Last time it was a difficult thing to fill. Post that one. I've seen it. I can't wait to see what sort of answers come in because it'll be across the board, I'm sure. Go post the hardest job you have to fill. And now back to you, Sarah. Sorry. What can we do? How can we do this better? What sort of challenges exist there around planning? All those kind of things. Try to throw that all together in one last bit of the conversation.
Yeah, it's summer school, right? Annual planning process for so many of us is here right now, or it's just around the corner. I would give everybody the tip this year, do annual planning differently. Invite yourself to the table at annual planning, because the last thing that you want is to be a reactive organization. Oh gosh, I have all these recs to fill, and what is all this stuff? And why do you need a purple squirrel AI specialist in marketing? And is that the same as the purple squirrel they want in the product team, or is that a help, right? Take the opportunity to invite yourself to the table and talk to your leaders about the language of the business. Talk to them about, I'll give you an example from HiBob actually. Talk to them about the annual growth target, the sales target for next year. How big is it? How big is it compared to this year, right? How many reps, quota carriers, would you need to fill that target? Okay, where do you want to hire them? What geos, what locations, right? What's the average hiring, the time to fill for those locations? What's the notice period for those locations? How long does it really take to land a candidate if you're hiring in, I don't know, Germany or the UK versus you're hiring in the US? Look at the data that you have available to you. You have this stuff if you've done that hiring before, right? Or you can look up some of the legal complications that come into play around things like notice periods, right? Figure out how far back you'd have to get started to think about, I got to fill this many headcount of this many sales folks to meet our quota, to meet our revenue plan. It's got to be in this geos. It's got to be with these levels of seniority, and come back to your business leaders and say, you know, it's June. I love that we're getting started now. We need to start hiring. If we think that we're going to have somebody in Q1 at all in Germany, we got to start now. You got to give me the budget now. You got to open the rec now. You got to give me the recruitment marketing dollars now. We got to start this now, right? And do that on a global scale. It's not just the sales plan that you want to look at, but it's a good sort of way of thinking about how many quota carriers can your team really hire that many people all at the same time in all those different places. But think about how that applies to other departments as well. You have a great strategic project in marketing. You want to adopt all this AI technology. You want to maybe add AI to your own product. Okay, well, where are we going to find the people who know how to do that? And how long is that going to take? And what's that going to cost? And have you really thought about, do you need new people, or can you train the people internally? Because AI is new for all of us, right? Do we really need an AI scientist with a big pay premium, or do we need to upscale somebody internally to be able to help us because they have the aptitude and the desire to make that step in their career? You in HR have so many great insights that your business leaders, and I'm a business leader, I don't have them. I need your help. I really want your help in the annual planning process. So I challenge everybody on the call today to show up and offer that help. And you're not always going to find a business leader across the table from you like me who says, yes, please come play in my sandbox. Please come help me along with this. But I guarantee you there's going to be at least one or two in your organization for whom you can radically change the preparedness that they're going to have going into next year.
Yes. And being proactive there means fewer of the fighting fires for yourself on the back end, I would say, probably, right? Less of that, oh gosh, now I've got to fit this rec into everything else that I'm doing. And I've got these other, I was planning on doing this now and I got to do that. And
Totally.
being a
I
fire,
think
you have to plan ahead and
I Yeah, I mean, I think in your study that we did with you, it was something like
Mhm.
75% of organizations struggle to accurately forecast their hiring needs. What can you do to make it so that it's not 75% when we run this survey next year, it's 7% or 5%, right? I would love to see a dramatic shift in being able to anticipate the needs of the organization. Because when you start to think about how big an impact that has on your business, I think it was like the same study, 8% of teams said that they missed their hiring plan last year. And that actually put their overall business plan at risk because maybe they were hiring quota carriers. Maybe they were hiring the next great product developer. Maybe they were hiring a marketing genius to help them enter a new territory. That's a huge responsibility that your team has. And again, it's a huge opportunity for you to say, okay, let's do this differently. Let's try a different approach and let's see if we can be better business partners to the organization.
all right. So I've taken a bunch of my own notes over here. If they're this, I've got some good takeaways, good ideas from this, and I know everybody else has as well. If they want to know more about Bob, what the team is doing, how you're helping employers to solve some of these kinds of problems, what's the best way for them to connect?
If you want to say hi to Bob, and we would love you to, please visit us at hibob.com or find us on social. You can also say hi to me on LinkedIn or on the artist formerly known as Twitter, where I tweet at Fair Pay Monster.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah, so much for your encouragement here, for your excitement about this, for helping all of these employers out there, all of our friends in the space to do a better job of communicating with candidates, being transparent and connecting through their culture. I appreciate you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm really so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having us back.
For everybody else, stay tuned for more HR Summer School coming right up.